Picture this: a battlefield shrouded in dust and the deafening clash of steel, where knights clad in armor charge forward, their identities hidden beneath metal and mail. Yet, amidst the chaos, their shields blaze with vivid colors and bold symbols, each one a silent proclamation of who they are and what they stand for. This was the power of heraldry, the medieval world's visual language of honor, lineage, and courage. Far more than mere decoration, these designs were a knight's signature, a family's pride, and sometimes even a battlefield's deciding factor. Today, we're stepping into that world to unravel the stories behind 25 stunning heraldic emblems, each one a masterpiece of meaning and artistry. Think of heraldry as the social media of the Middle Ages, a way to announce your name, your achievements, and your allegiances without saying a word. A single glance at a shield could reveal whether a knight was a fierce warrior, a loyal vassal, or a noble of ancient lineage. The colors weren't chosen at random. They spoke of virtues like bravery, purity, or justice. The animals and mythical creatures each had a tale to tell, from the courage of the lion to the cunning of the fox. These symbols weren't just art, they were a code, a language understood across kingdoms and cultures, binding the medieval world together in a shared visual dialect. So why does this matter to us today? Because heraldry is more than a relic of the past. It's a window into the minds and hearts of the people who shaped history. Every time we look at these designs, we're deciphering the hopes, fears, and dreams of knights and nobles who lived centuries ago. And as we explore these 25 breathtaking emblems together, you'll start to see the hidden threads that connect their world to ours, the universal human desire to be remembered, to stand for something greater, and to leave a mark that outlasts the ages. Ready to unlock the secrets of these knightly symbols, let's begin our journey into the vivid, storied world of medieval heraldry. The origins of heraldry trace back to the chaos of 12th century battlefields, where identifying friend from foe beneath layers of steel became a matter of life and death. Imagine the scene: hundreds of armored knights, their faces obscured by helmets, charging into combat with no way to distinguish allies except by the painted designs on their shields. This practical necessity birthed a visual language so precise that even today, centuries later, we can trace a knight's lineage just by decoding the colors and symbols they once carried into war. What started as simple markings soon blossomed into a complex art form governed by strict rules known as the laws of heraldry. Every element, from the bold red of a field to the golden lion rearing upon it, held meaning. Colors weren't just decorative, they shouted virtues. Red, called gules, spoke of warriors' courage. Blue or azure hinted at loyalty as deep as the sky. Even the way a creature was positioned, a lion standing tall versus one mid-leap, could signal different triumphs in battle or generations of family history. And this system wasn't random. Specialized heralds acted as medieval graphic designers, ensuring no two noble families bore the same emblem, much like trademarks today. But heraldry wasn't just for war. These symbols seeped into every corner of medieval life, stitched onto tapestries, carved into castle walls, even stamped onto wax seals to authenticate documents. A knight's shield might display his father's emblem with a small added detail, a border of shells or a star marking him as a younger son, a visual footnote in the family saga. Over time, these designs became passports to power, instantly signaling who could be trusted, who owed allegiance, and who carried the weight of a legendary name. The first emblem we'll explore is the gold lion rampant on a crimson field, a classic symbol of the Plantagenet kings. this wasn't just a fierce animal, it was a declaration. The lion's unyielding stance mirrored the dynasty's ambition, while the scarlet backdrop whispered of blood shed for crown and country. To see this shield charging toward you in battle was to know you faced a force with centuries of conquest behind it. And that's the magic of heraldry. It turns thread and paint into a story that outlasts kingdoms. The golden lion standing tall on a crimson shield wasn't just a striking image, it was a carefully crafted declaration of identity. When a medieval knight bore this emblem, he wasn't merely claiming courage, he was aligning himself with the very essence of royalty. The lion's gold hue, known in heraldic terms as or, whispered of the sun's unyielding light, a metaphor for divine favor and enduring legacy. And that vibrant red background, far from arbitrary, it echoed the blood shed in defense of honor, a visual oath of loyalty written in the language of heraldry. But the true genius of this symbol lay in its details. A lion, rampant forepaws raised, claws unsheathed, wasn't just fierce, it was a promise. This posture signaled a warrior mid-action, a defender poised to strike, transforming the shield into a living portrait of vigilance. Contrast that with a lion passant, one paw gracefully lifted as if mid-stride, often used to denote a ruler's steady, measured authority. Even the direction the lion faced carried weight. A beast glancing backward over its shoulder might hint at a family's storied past, while one staring boldly forward proclaimed ambition unshaken by time. Kings like Richard the Lionheart didn't adopt this emblem by accident. The lion was the medieval world's ultimate multi-tool of symbolism, equally at home representing biblical strength as it was echoing the legendary might of ancient empires. When crusaders marched under banners emblazoned with golden lions, they weren't just carrying a coat of arms, they were invoking the aura of King David's lions and the mythological guardians of Babylon. This layered meaning made the lion both timeless and adaptable, a symbol that could flex to fit a dynasty's evolving story while remaining instantly recognizable across languages and borders. Now shift your gaze skyward to another ruler of the heraldic world, the eagle. Where the lion roared earthly dominance, the eagle soared with celestial authority. Its outstretched wings spanned shields from Rome to Byzantium, a feathered declaration of imperial vision. Unlike the lion's grounded ferocity, the eagle embodied perspective. Kings who bore this symbol claimed not just power, but the right to survey and govern all beneath them. And just as the lion's posture whispered secrets, the eagle's wings told tales. Displayed wide, they signaled protection, while folded close might suggest strategic patience. Two regal creatures, two sides of the same coin, one earthbound and unyielding, the other airborne and far-seeing, together painting a complete portrait of medieval majesty. While the lion roared its earthly dominance, the eagle soared above as the undisputed symbol of celestial vision. In heraldry, this majestic bird wasn't merely decorative, it was a bold statement of imperial reach. Picture an eagle with wings outstretched, each feather meticulously rendered, as if frozen mid-flight. This posture wasn't just artistic flair, it communicated a ruler's claim to divine authority, as if they could survey their domain with the same piercing clarity as the bird itself. The eagle's presence on a shield or banner whispered of a leader who saw beyond the horizon, who governed not just lands but destinies. Now consider the double-headed eagle, a breathtaking twist on this ancient symbol. Adopted by the Holy Roman Empire, this variant wasn't just twice as intimidating, it was a geopolitical masterstroke. One head gazed west toward Europe, the other east toward Byzantium, a silent proclamation that the empire's influence spanned continents. This wasn't mere decoration, it was a visual manifesto declaring that the ruler's wisdom and strength extended in all directions. the double-headed eagle became the ultimate emblem of balance, a reminder that true power required vigilance over multiple realms, whether spiritual and temporal or east and west. But the eagle's significance ran deeper than politics. In medieval thought, this bird was believed to fly so high it could stare directly into the sun, a metaphor for a ruler's unflinching connection to divine truth. When a knight bore an eagle on his shield, he wasn't just claiming noble status, he was aligning himself with the heavens themselves. The golden eagles of Charlemagne's legacy or the black eagles of Prussian coats of arms weren't chosen randomly. They were carefully curated symbols meant to elevate mere mortals into something approaching the celestial. Now, imagine a creature that combined the eagle's soaring majesty with the lion's unshakable strength. Enter the Griffin. This mythical hybrid wasn't just a flight of fancy. In heraldry, it represented the perfect union of intellect and power. With the body of a lion and the wings and head of an eagle, the Griffin became the medieval world's ultimate guardian. Nobles who displayed this creature on their shields were making an unmistakable claim that they possessed both the strategic vision of the eagle and the battlefield courage of the lion. The Griffin's duality made it irresistible to crusading knights and scholarly rulers alike. Some legends claimed Griffins hoarded gold, linking them to wisdom and hidden knowledge. Others told of their ferocity in battle, making them natural symbols for warriors who saw themselves as both thinkers and fighters. When this creature appeared in heraldry, it often signaled a family's unique blend of virtues, perhaps a lineage of scholar kings or warrior poets. And just like the eagle and lion before it, every detail mattered. A griffin shone with claws bared spoke of readiness for combat, while one perched calmly might hint at a ruler's judicious restraint. What makes these symbols so fascinating is how they transcended geography. From the snow-covered castles of Poland to the sun-baked keeps of Spain, the griffin appeared again and again, its meaning shifting slightly with each culture yet always retaining that core idea, the marriage of might and mind. In an age where most people couldn't read, these visual shortcuts told entire epics at a glance, turning shields and banners into storybooks of power. As we move deeper into the menagerie of heraldic symbols, keep this in mind. Every creature, every color, every seemingly minor detail was a deliberate choice, a piece of a centuries-old puzzle we're only just beginning to decode. The eagle's wings weren't just art, they were a map of ambition. The griffin's hybrid form wasn't whimsy, it was a medieval mission statement, and the next symbol we'll explore carries its own equally rich tapestry of meaning, waiting to be unfurled. The griffin's legacy as heraldry's ultimate guardian brings us to another mythical creature that set medieval imaginations ablaze: the dragon. Where the griffin balanced strength and wisdom, the dragon embodied raw, untamed power, its serpentine coils and bat-like wings striking both awe and terror into the hearts of onlookers. Unlike the noble lion or regal eagle, dragons in heraldry were complex symbols, equally capable of representing destructive chaos or sovereign authority. A knight who bore this creature on his shield wasn't just making a statement, he was issuing a challenge. Consider the Welsh red dragon, a symbol so potent it still flames across Wales' flag today. This wasn't merely a fearsome beast, it was a rallying cry, a declaration of unbroken lineage tracing back to the ancient Britons. The dragon's fiery breath symbolized purification, burning away the old to make way for the new, while its armored scales whispered of invincibility. But dragons in heraldry weren't monolithic. A dragon rampant, claws raised and wings spread, might signify a warrior's relentless aggression, while one coiled around a sword could hint at hard-won victory, as if the beast itself had been subdued and harnessed for a greater cause. What's fascinating is how dragons shifted roles across cultures. In English heraldry, a slain dragon often represented triumph over adversity, echoing the legend of Saint George. Yet in Germanic traditions, dragons were protectors of wisdom, their sinuous forms guarding sacred knowledge like living vaults. This duality made them irresistible to noble families who saw themselves as both conquerors and custodians. A dragon with its tail knotted, that might symbolize a dynasty's ability to tame chaos. Wings folded in repose, perhaps a nod to strategic patience, the calm before the storm. Now contrast this with a creature far more humble yet equally laden with meaning, the bear. While dragons soared in myth, bears walked the earth with a grounded ferocity that resonated deeply in Northern European heraldry. A bear standing on its hind legs wasn't just a show of strength, it was a metaphor for resilience, an animal that could weather the harshest winters and emerge unbowed. Families in Scandinavia and Russia often adopted bears to telegraph endurance, their thick pelts mirroring the rugged landscapes they ruled. Unlike the dragon's fire, the bear's power was quiet but unshakable, a reminder that true authority didn't always need to roar. Yet heraldry's genius lay in its ability to elevate even the smallest creatures. Take the bee, a symbol that buzzed with significance far beyond its size. Clusters of golden bees on a shield weren't merely decorative. They spoke of industry, community, and the sweet rewards of collective effort. Napoleon famously draped his coronation cloak in bees, linking his empire to the ancient Merovingians, who saw these insects as emblems of immortality. In an era where most symbols leaned toward predators, the bee offered a different kind of power, one built not on conquest but on tireless collaboration. From the dragon's flame to the bear's steadfast might and the bee's quiet diligence, heraldry transformed animals into alphabets of ambition. Each creature, whether real or imagined, became a brushstroke in a larger portrait, one where courage could take wing, wisdom might wear scales, and the smallest symbols carried the weight of kingdoms. As we turn next to the vibrant language of heraldic colors, remember this. In the medieval world, every hue held a secret, and every shade told a story waiting to be decoded. The dragon's coiled might gives way to a symbol of quiet nobility, the stag, an animal that carried its own weight of meaning in the world of heraldry. Where dragons roared with untamed power, the stag moved through medieval forests with a grace that spoke of sovereignty and renewal. Its towering anthers weren't just weapons, they were natural crowns, branching like the limbs of ancient trees, symbolizing a connection to both earth and the cycles of life. To bear a stag on one's shield was to claim more than hunting prowess. It was an assertion of endurance, a nod to the wisdom of the wild, and a declaration of one's place in the natural order. Consider the white stag, a creature that shimmered through countless European legends. In heraldry, its appearance wasn't merely decorative, it was a beacon. This elusive beast, often associated with purity and spiritual quests, transformed a coat of arms into something almost sacred. Families who adopted the stag as their emblem were subtly aligning themselves with tales of Arthurian knights chasing visions through misty woods, suggesting their lineage carried a divine purpose. Even the stag's posture told a story. A stag at rest, legs folded beneath it, might whisper of peace and diplomacy, while one mid-leap could evoke swift justice or the relentless pursuit of noble causes. But the stag's symbolism ran deeper than myth. Its antlers, shed and regrown each year, became a powerful metaphor for resilience, a visual promise that no matter the trials faced, renewal was inevitable. This cyclical strength resonated deeply with noble houses weathering political storms or military defeats. And unlike the dragon's solitary might, the stag often moved in herds, making it an ideal emblem for families who prized unity and communal leadership. The Duke of Rutland's crest, for example, features a seated stag not just as a mark of personal dignity, but as a reminder that true authority protects its own. Now shift your gaze from the forest to the skies, where another creature dances across shields with equal grace, the falcon. If the stag embodied earthly nobility, the falcon was its celestial counterpart, a feathered arrow of precision and focus. Unlike the eagle's broad imperial dominance, the falcon in heraldry represented razor-sharp intent, a hunter whose success hinged on patience, timing, and unerring aim. Knights who chose this symbol often sought to project not brute force, but disciplined strategy, their actions as calculated as a falcon's dive. The falcon's accessories layered even more meaning. A bird hooded, its eyes covered by a leather cap signified readiness to act when the moment demanded, a lesson in restraint, one perched on a gloved hand. That spoke of trust between ruler and ruled, a bond as carefully maintained as a falconer's delicate balance of control and freedom. And when depicted with bells jingling from its jesses, the falcon became a walking allegory for the idea that true power need not be silent. It could announce itself with clarity and purpose. What makes these symbols so compelling is how they mirror the duality of medieval ideals. The stag's antlers and the falcon's talons were weapons, yes, but also instruments of survival and guardianship. They remind us that heraldry was never just about declaring strength. It was about defining how that strength would be wielded. Would it be the stag's patient vigilance or the falcon's decisive strike? The answer often lay in the tiniest details, the tilt of a head, the spread of a wing, or the glint of a heraldic artist's brush bringing parchment to life. As we trace these symbols across centuries, we're not just decoding art, we're unraveling a lost language of values, where every curve and color held the weight of oaths sworn in torchlit halls. The next emblem we'll explore carries its own echoes of myth and meaning, waiting to unfold its story in the same vivid detail. The stag's quiet nobility finds its counterpoint in the boar, a creature that charged into heraldry with unapologetic ferocity. Where the stag symbolized serene authority, the boar embodied raw, unbridled determination, its tusks and muscular frame transforming shields into declarations of unyielding resolve. This wasn't just an animal, it was a battle cry rendered in pigment and gilt. Medieval knights who bore the boar on their armor weren't merely showcasing hunting prowess, they were telegraphing a willingness to meet challenges head-on, to fight with a tenacity that bordered on the primal. Consider the wild boar's natural habits, a creature that stands its ground when cornered, turning even retreat into a tactical maneuver. In heraldry, this translated to a symbol of strategic defiance. A boar rampant rearing on its hind legs signified aggression, while one at rest with bristles raised might hint at vigilance, a warning that peace could swiftly turn to war. The Welsh princes of Glyndwr's lineage famously adopted the boar, its image a silent promise that their resistance to invasion would be as relentless as the beast's charge. Even the boar's posture carried nuance. One depicted mid-stride suggested momentum, an unstoppable force, while a stationary boar with lowered head signaled a readiness to defend rather than attack. Yet the boar's symbolism wasn't monolithic. In Celtic traditions, it represented hospitality and abundance, its meat a centerpiece of feasts. Some noble houses used the boar to signify both martial prowess and generosity, a balance of warrior and provider. The contrast between its roles is striking. On one hand, a creature of brutal combat, on the other, a symbol of communal sustenance. This duality made the boar irresistible to families who saw themselves as both protectors and benefactors. A boar with an oak sprig clenched in its jaws, for instance, might marry the ideas of strength and renewal, suggesting that even in struggle there was growth. Now shift from the boar's earthy intensity to a creature of celestial grace, the swan. If the boar roared defiance, the swan glided into heraldry as an emblem of transcendent beauty and loyalty. Its curved neck and pristine feathers brought a poetic elegance to shields, often representing fidelity, as swans were believed to mate for life. But don't mistake its serenity for weakness. A swan with wings raised wasn't just a pretty image, it was a reminder that grace could coexist with power, that even the most delicate appearances could harbor strength. The swan's symbolism flourished in orders of chivalry, where its purity mirrored knightly ideals. The Bohun family of England, for example, paired swans with golden chains, suggesting nobility tempered by responsibility. And in Nordic heraldry, a swan with a crown around its neck whispered of sovereignty bestowed by divine right. Unlike the boar's visceral impact, the swan's power lay in its stillness. A single glance at its image could evoke courtly love, artistic patronage, or the quiet dignity of enduring leadership. What unites these symbols, the boar's ferocity and the swan's elegance, is their shared language of duality. Heraldry rarely dealt in absolutes, it thrived in the spaces between contrasts. A boar could be both destroyer and sustainer, just as a swan might embody fragility and unshakable resolve. These creatures weren't just decorative, they were mirrors held up to the families who bore them, reflecting the complexities of their identities, ambitions, and the eras they sought to navigate. As we turn next to the bold geometries of heraldic crosses, remember this: every symbol, whether beast or shape, was a thread in a larger tapestry of meaning, waiting to be pulled and examined. The boar's primal energy gives way to a creature of quiet cunning, the owl, heraldry's most enigmatic symbol of wisdom. Unlike the boar's battlefield bravado, the owl perched on medieval shields with an air of watchful intelligence, its wide eyes hinting at knowledge gathered in moonlit shadows. This wasn't a creature of brute force but of strategy, its presence suggesting that true power lay in perception. Families who adopted the owl signaled more than nobility. They proclaimed a legacy of learning, their influence built not just on swords but on scrolls and statecraft. Picture an owl with wings slightly spread as if caught mid-flight, a heraldic choice rich with meaning. This posture transformed the bird into a living metaphor for vigilance, its poised stillness belying the ability to strike with precision when least expected. The Allingtons of England, for instance, wove owls into their crest alongside books, crafting a visual manifesto of scholarly prowess intertwined with martial readiness. Even the owl's accessories whispered secrets. One gripping a key might symbolize guardianship of hidden knowledge, while another perched atop a crown could imply wisdom's role in sustaining rulership. But the owl's symbolism wasn't monolithic. In some traditions, its nocturnal nature linked it to mystery, an emblem for families with ties to diplomacy or espionage. The Visconti of Milan famously paired their owl with a serpent, a daring combination suggesting that wisdom could both illuminate and defend. Contrast this with Germanic coats of arms, where owls often appeared alongside lanterns, casting the bird as a literal and figurative bringer of light. This adaptability made the owl indispensable to nobles who saw governance as an art balancing shadow and illumination. Now, consider how this creature's meaning shifts when placed beside other symbols. An owl gazing at a star, a nod to celestial guidance. One clutching a scroll, the weight of recorded history. These layered compositions turned shields into intricate puzzles, where every element conversed with the others. Unlike the boar's singular ferocity, the owl thrived in nuance, its power rooted not in tusks but in the unblinking patience to outthink adversaries. As twilight falls on our exploration of heraldry's creatures, remember this: whether furred, feathered, or forged in myth, each was a masterclass in medieval branding. The boar's charge and the owl's stare were two sides of the same coin, one declaring strength visible to all, the other whispering of depths understood only by those who knew how to look. And as we turn next to the vibrant language of colors and patterns, we'll see how hues and shapes wove their own silent stories into the tapestry of knighthood. The owl's silent watch over the realm of heraldry brings us to an equally fascinating language, the vibrant world of colors that transformed shields into canvases of meaning. While creatures like lions and eagles captured attention with their bold forms, it was the hues beneath them that whispered the subtlest secrets. Imagine a knight's shield not as mere decoration, but as a carefully coded message where every shade held the weight of oaths, virtues, and lineage. Heraldic colors weren't chosen for aesthetics alone. They were a visual vocabulary, each pigment a word in the medieval world's unspoken dialogue. Take red, known in heraldry as gules. This wasn't just a striking backdrop for golden lions, it pulsed with symbolism. The color of spilled blood and fiery courage, red declared a knight's willingness to defend his honor or die trying. Families who draped their shields in gules weren't merely announcing their presence, they were vowing to meet challenges with unflinching resolve. Contrast that with blue or azure, a hue as deep as the twilight sky. Where red roared, blue spoke of loyalty that stretched as far as the horizon, of wisdom as boundless as the heavens. The Plantagenets' use of azure in their fleur-de-lis patterns wasn't accidental. It tied their rule to divine favor and steadfast governance. Then there's green, vert, a color that rooted nobility in the land itself. More than just the shade of forests, vert symbolized growth, renewal, and the fertile promise of a dynasty's future. A knight bearing green might be telegraphing his role as a steward of both people and territory, his authority as natural as the oaks in his domain, and what of black, sable? Far from a mark of mourning, this color often represented constancy, a family's unbreakable will, as enduring as the night. The bold contrast of sable against silver or gold turned shields into declarations that even in darkness, their bearers would stand firm. But heraldry's palette held brighter notes too. Gold or ore shimmered with the brilliance of the sun, a metal so precious it became shorthand for divine wisdom and generosity. Silver, argent, mirrored the moon's glow, suggesting purity and strategic clarity. These metals weren't just decorative, they were alchemical, transforming fabric and paint into emblems of celestial connection. When a coat of arms paired or with azure, it wasn't merely pretty, it was a visual oath marrying heavenly guidance to earthly power. The true mastery of heraldic colors lay in their combinations. A shield divided vertically into gold and black wasn't just striking. It whispered of a lineage that balanced enlightenment with resilience. Diagonal bands of red and green might signal a family's dual legacy as both warriors and cultivators. Even the placement mattered. Colors at the top of a shield carried different weight than those at the base, much like the hierarchy of values they represented. These weren't random choices, they were calculated compositions, each as deliberate as a king's seal on a treaty. As we pull back from this rainbow of meaning, remember, these colors survived centuries because they spoke louder than words ever could. In an age where few could read, a flash of crimson or a glint of gold told stories of courage, faith, and ambition that transcended language. And just as we've decoded the messages hidden in beasts and pigments, our next exploration will unravel the geometric poetry of heraldic patterns where lines, shapes, and divisions wove their own silent sagas of identity and allegiance. Beneath the vivid colors of heraldry lies another layer of meaning, the bold geometric patterns that structured every shield, banner, and crest. These weren't just decorative borders. They were the architectural bones of heraldic design, shaping how symbols interacted and amplifying their messages. Imagine a canvas divided by slashing lines or checkered bands, each division a deliberate choice, each pattern a silent proclamation. A shield split vertically down the middle, known as purpale, wasn't merely symmetrical. It often represented the merging of two noble houses through marriage, a visual handshake etched in pigment and gilt. Take the bend, a diagonal stripe sweeping from corner to corner like a knight's sash. This wasn't random geometry, it symbolized defense, a literal and figurative slant against adversity. When rendered in red across a golden field, it transformed into a striking declaration. Courage gules guided by wisdom, or contrast that with the chevron, a V-shaped pattern resembling rafters. This design whispered of protection and steadfastness, as if the bearer's lineage were a roof sheltering their people. The de Clare family's iconic red chevrons on gold didn't just catch the eye, they broadcast a promise. Here stands a house that builds and defends. Even seemingly simple patterns carried weight. A shield quartered into alternating colors, or chequy, evoked the strategic complexity of a chessboard, a nod to families who prized cunning as much as combat. The mighty Beauchamps wore this pattern with pride, their checkered fields hinting at generations of political acumen. And then there's the saltire, that striking X-shaped cross often associated with martyrdom or pilgrimage. When Scottish clans rallied under a white saltire on blue, they weren't just choosing a pretty design, they were invoking the legend of St. Andrew, tying their identity to faith and sacrifice. What makes these patterns so fascinating is how they interacted with the symbols they framed. A lion rampant atop a field of lozenges, diamond shapes took on new meaning, the beast's ferocity now tempered by the geometric suggestion of landholdings or textile wealth. Stripes, known as bars, could imply a family's role as bridge builders or mediators, their lives spent spanning divides. Every line, every intersection was a conscious decision, a way to layer meaning upon meaning without uttering a word. This visual grammar extended beyond shields to the very fabrics of medieval life. Heralds could read a knight's surcoat or a banner's folds like pages of a book, decoding allegiances at a glance. A diamond pattern on a saddlecloth might signal a lord's mining interests, while wavy lines on a standard whispered of naval prowess. Even the humblest merchant sign borrowed heraldic geometry, its stripes or crosses telegraphing trustworthiness to an illiterate populace. As we trace these patterns across history, we begin to see them for what they truly were: a silent dialect of power, as precise as any written contract. The next time you encounter a coat of arms, look past the lions and eagles, study the scaffolding beneath them. Those lines and divisions are the unsung heroes of heraldry, the framework that turned vibrant chaos into legible legacy. And as we turn now to the flora of heraldry, the roses, lilies, and thistles that bloomed amid this geometry, we'll discover how nature's beauty intertwined with these human-made codes of honor. The structured geometry of heraldic shields finds its floral counterpart in one of history's most enduring symbols, the fleur de lis. This stylized lily, with its trio of petals bound by delicate bands, bloomed across medieval Europe not merely as decoration but as a visual anthem of purity, sovereignty, and divine favor. Unlike the rigid lines of chevrons or saltires, the fleur de lis brought organic elegance to coats of arms, its curves softening the martial edges of shields while carrying layers of meaning as intricate as its design. Trace the fleur de lis back to its roots, and you'll uncover a symbol that transcended borders. For French kings, it was a sacred emblem. Legend claimed an angel presented Clovis with a golden lily at his baptism, tying the monarchy to celestial grace. The three petals were later interpreted as symbols of faith, wisdom, and chivalry, a trinity of virtues that defined ideal rulership, but the fleur de lis wasn't confined to royalty. When the Medici family incorporated it into their crest, they signaled not just political ambition but a nod to Florence's patron saint, John the Baptist, whose association with lilies tied banking power to spiritual legitimacy. What makes this symbol so fascinating is its adaptability. In English heraldry, a fleur de lis might mark a night service in French campaigns, while in Italian city-states it hinted at trade alliances. Even its orientation told a story. Upright, it spoke of aspiration. Inverted, it could symbolize humility or, in rarer cases, a fallen lineage. The difference between a fleur de lis, issuant, emerging from a line, versus one seeded with tiny dots might distinguish a family's agricultural ties from their scholarly pursuits. Now consider how this emblem interacted with other heraldic elements. A fleur de lis placed atop a bend transformed the diagonal stripe into a bridge of honor, suggesting military accolades earned under divine watch. Scattered across a field of azure, the lilies became a celestial garden, as in the arms of the Gonzaga family, where they whispered of both piety and cultivated power. The symbol's versatility allowed it to flourish in contexts as varied as crusader banners and merchant guild seals, proving that heraldic language could be both universal and deeply personal. Yet the fleur de lis wasn't alone in heraldry's garden. The rose, with its layered petals and thorned stem, wove its own narrative, particularly in England's Wars of the Roses. A red rose ensolil didn't just represent the House of Lancaster. Its radiant backdrop suggested authority illuminated by divine right. Contrast that with the white rose of York, often depicted fresh and dewdropped, a symbol of unblemished claim. When Tudor monarchs fused both into the Tudor rose, they created a living metaphor for reconciliation, each petal a chapter in England's stormy history. Beyond royalty, roses took on other roles. A rose gules red on a silver field might declare enduring love, while one seeded with gold could hint at alchemical pursuits. The Harringtons of Cheshire paired their rose with a martlet, a mythical footless bird, suggesting that their legacy, like the flower's fragrance, would travel beyond physical bounds. Even the rose's state mattered. A bloom fully open signaled generosity, while a bud hinted at potential waiting to unfold. These floral symbols remind us that heraldry was never just about war, it was about identity in all its facets. A lily could carry the weight of a kingdom's divine mandate, while a rose might preserve the delicate peace between rival dynasties. Their petals, though frozen in pigment and thread, continue to whisper stories of faith, politics, and the human desire to root transient lives in something enduring. As we turn next to the inanimate objects that shouldered equal symbolic weight, swords, castles, and crowns, we'll see how heraldry transformed the mundane into the monumental. The fleur de lis's graceful petals lead us to another blossom that rooted itself deeply in heraldic tradition, the rose. Where the lily spoke of divine connection, the rose carried thorns alongside its beauty, a perfect emblem for noble houses navigating the prickly paths of power and passion. This wasn't just a flower, it was a layered symbol, its velvety petals concealing as much as they revealed. In the hands of heraldic artists, roses became visual shorthand for everything from romantic devotion to the bloodiest dynastic rivalries. Consider the Wars of the Roses, where two royal houses turned this bloom into a battlefield. The Lancastrians' red rose wasn't merely a pretty badge, it pulsed with the urgency of their claim, its crimson hue echoing the blood they were willing to shed. Contrast that with the York's white rose, pristine as fresh snowfall, its pallor suggesting an untainted right to rule. When Henry Tudor merged both into a single Tudor rose after his victory, he didn't just end a war, he crafted a living allegory. The intertwined blossoms became a masterstroke of political theater, whispering that unity could grow even from decades of strife. But the rose's symbolism extended far beyond English soil. In Burgundian heraldry, a golden rose might signify alchemical aspirations, its petals gilded like the sun. German knights sometimes paired roses with swords, suggesting that love and war were two sides of the same coin. Even the rose's state held meaning. A bloom fully open signaled lavish generosity, while a clenched bud hinted at potential waiting to unfurl. The Harringtons of Cheshire took this further, surrounding their rose with martlets, those footless mythical birds, as if to say their influence would take flight like the flower's fragrance. What makes the rose so compelling is its duality. Unlike the fleur-de-lis's unblemished purity, the rose embraced contradiction, soft yet guarded, fleeting yet eternal. A rose with a severed stem on the Douglas crest wasn't just mourning a fallen leader. It was a vow that their lineage would bloom again. When the Medicis placed 5 red roses on a golden shield, they weren't decorating, they were encoding their banking empire's growth, each bloom representing a branch of their financial reach. Now shift your gaze to the rose's humble cousin, the thistle. If the rose embodied courtly elegance, the thistle was its rustic counterpart, bristling with defiant pride. Scotland's adoption of this spiny plant as its national emblem wasn't accidental. Legend tells of Norse invaders creeping barefoot through the night, only to yelp in pain when stepping on thistles, alerting the Scots and saving the kingdom. In heraldry, the thistle became a masterclass in turning adversity into identity. Its prickles whispered, "Touch not this flower," transforming a weed into a warning. The thistle's golden counterpart, the sunflower, brought its own symbolism to noble crests. Unlike roses or lilies, sunflowers turned their faces to follow the sun, a natural metaphor for loyalty. When the Farnese family included them in their arms, they weren't just celebrating beauty, they were declaring their constant allegiance to papal authority, their devotion as steady as the flower's solar dance. Even the sunflower seeds carried meaning, suggesting fertility of both land and lineage. From the rose's velvet contradictions to the thistle's armored resilience, heraldry's flora reveals how medieval families saw themselves not just as warriors or rulers, but as cultivators of legacies that could outlast seasons. These weren't static symbols, they were living things, evolving with each generation like gardens tended through centuries. And as we turn next to the crafted objects that adorn shields, crowns, swords, and towers, we'll see how human ingenuity wove itself into this vibrant tapestry of identity. The rose's delicate petals and thorns paved the way for a creature of even greater paradox, the unicorn, heraldry's most enchanting symbol of purity and untamable strength. Where the rose balanced beauty with political weight, the unicorn danced across shields and banners as a living allegory, its spiraled horn and equine grace masking a power that could purify poison and defy capture. This wasn't just a fairy tale beast, it was a masterclass in medieval symbolism, embodying everything from Christ-like sacrifice to the fierce independence of noble houses. Take the royal arms of Scotland, where the unicorn rears with a crown around its neck, its chain broken but still dangling. This arresting image wasn't mere fantasy. It declared the Scottish monarchy's belief in their divine right to rule, unchained but bound by sacred duty. The broken chain whispered of resistance to subjugation, while the crown signaled sovereignty earned, not given. Contrast this with the unicorn's role in English heraldry after the union of the crowns, where it was paired with the lion, the two beasts mirroring the uneasy alliance between Scotland and England. Together, they became a visual metaphor, the lion's earthly authority balanced by the unicorn's celestial grace. But the unicorn's symbolism ran deeper than politics. Its horn, or alicorn, was said to neutralize poison, a trait that transformed the creature into a medieval antidote emblem. Apothecaries carved cups from narwhal tusks, passing them off as unicorn relics to nobles terrified of assassination. In heraldry, this purity took on spiritual dimensions. A unicorn resting its head in a maiden's lap, as seen in the crests of certain French families, wasn't just romantic. It echoed the medieval belief that only innocence could tame the untamable, a nod to the Virgin Mary's role in Christian iconography. The unicorn's posture, like all heraldic details, carried weight. One depicted couchant, lying down with head raised, suggested vigilance in peace, while a unicorn, rampant on its hind legs, signaled readiness for battle. Some German coats of arms showed the beast impaling its horn through a crescent moon, a cryptic reference to triumph over Islam during the Crusades. Even the color of its horn mattered. Silver implied lunar mysticism, while gold tied it to solar divinity. What makes the unicorn so captivating is its duality. It could represent both Christ's sacrifice and a kingdom's defiance, both healing and unyielding wildness. The Lindsay clan of Scotland paired their unicorn with a star, suggesting celestial guidance, while the Bonvilles of England framed theirs with oak leaves, binding the creature's magic to ancient woodland wisdom. Unlike the rose's earthly politics, the unicorn thrived in the realm of myth, yet its impact on shields and standards was as real as the battles fought beneath them. As we leave the unicorn's shimmering shadow, we approach another symbol straddling myth and reality, the Griffin. But that's a tale for another moment, one where eagle's wings meet lion's claws, and heraldry's imagination soars even higher. The unicorn's shimmering mystique finds its counterpoint in an object of rugged practicality, the anchor, heraldry's enduring emblem of maritime might and steadfast hope. Where the unicorn danced in realms of myth, the anchor planted itself firmly in the real-world struggles of sailors and sea lords, its heavy form a paradox of motion and stability. This wasn't just a tool, it was a visual oath symbolizing everything from naval triumphs to the quiet resilience of coastal dynasties who drew their power from the tides. Picture an anchor rendered in silver against a field of azure, the classic heraldic representation of maritime authority. The metal's gleam hinted at the reflective surface of calm waters, while its flukes dug deep into the design like a ship holding fast against a storm. Families like the Howards of England wove anchors into their crests not as mere nods to seafaring, but as declarations that their lineage was as unshakable as the ocean's bedrock. An anchor fouled with rope signaled a history of hard-won victories, the tangled lines whispering of battles weathered and obstacles overcome. But the anchor's symbolism ran deeper than brute strength. In Christian heraldry, it evolved into a metaphor for hope, echoing St. Paul's words that faith is the anchor of the soul. When crusading knights like the Knights Hospitaller incorporated anchors into their coats of arms, they merged martial duty with spiritual steadfastness, their mission as unwavering as a ship moored in turbulent seas. Even its shape carried layered meaning. The crossbar evoked salvation, while the curved arms suggested an embrace, as if the sea itself cradled those who respected its power. Now contrast this with the anchor's role in mercantile heraldry. A golden anchor on a merchant guild's banner didn't just mark trade routes, it promised safe passage and fair dealing, a silent contract etched in pigment and thread. The Visconti of Genoa paired theirs with a dolphin, transforming the emblem into a playful yet potent reminder that commerce and exploration sailed hand in hand. And when naval commanders like Andrea Doria stamped anchors onto their personal standards, they weren't boasting of conquests, they were asserting that true mastery lay in knowing when to hold fast and when to weigh anchor for new horizons. What makes the anchor so compelling is its duality. It could represent both the security of home port and the audacity to venture beyond known waters. A broken anchor chain might signify liberation from tyranny, while one entwined with coral spoke of alliances forged in unseen depths. Like the unicorn's chain, the anchor's restraints weren't always about confinement. Sometimes they marked the deliberate choice to stay, to endure, to become the fixed point in a shifting world. As we pull this symbol from heraldry's depths, we're reminded that the sea's language is as rich as the land's. Where the unicorn's magic thrived in forests and legends, the anchor's power surged through salt spray and trade winds, proving that nobility wasn't confined to castles. It could be cast in iron and lowered into the unknown, holding fast against the currents of history. The anchor's steadfast presence on medieval shields gives way to a far more enigmatic symbol, the serpent, a creature that slithered into heraldry with a duality few other emblems could match. Where the anchor represented stability and hope, the serpent coiled with paradox, embodying both wisdom and danger, healing and destruction. This wasn't just an animal, it was a masterclass in symbolic complexity, its sinuous form adapting to meanings as fluid as its movements. A knight bearing a serpent on his shield wasn't merely declaring a trait, he was inviting scrutiny, daring observers to unravel the layers of meaning hidden in every twist of the creature's tail. Consider the serpent's most ancient association, healing. The rod of Asclepius, a single snake winding around a staff, found its way into the crests of medical families and monastic orders, its presence a silent vow to mend what was broken. The Visconti of Milan famously paired their serpent with a child in its jaws, not a threat, but a reference to the legend of a noble ancestor who saved an infant from a viper's nest. Here, the serpent transformed into a symbol of salvation, its venomous nature subdued by an act of courage. Yet that same creature, when depicted swallowing its own tail as an Ouroboros, became a timeless emblem of cyclical renewal, whispering that endings were merely beginnings in disguise. But the serpent's darker side lurked just beneath the surface. A dragon-like wyvern with forked tongue and barbed tail signaled martial ferocity, its very posture a warning. The Stanley family of England wielded this image with precision, their crest serpent coiled to strike, a visual promise that their enemies would face cunning as sharp as fangs. In Scottish heraldry, a serpent entwined around a sword hinted at strategic patience, the ability to strike only when the moment was ripe. Even the creature's direction held meaning. One ascending a staff might represent ambition, while one descending could signify the crushing of rebellion. What makes the serpent so compelling is its ability to embody opposites without contradiction. A serpent crown could denote enlightened rule, as in the arms of the Est family, where it balanced wisdom and authority. Yet that same crown, when shown being crushed beneath a lion's paw, might proclaim victory over treachery. The serpent's scales, meticulously rendered in silver or vert, weren't just decorative. They mirrored the layers of interpretation the creature demanded. Was it a guardian of secrets or a bringer of chaos? The answer often lay in the smallest details, the curve of its spine, the glint in its eye, or the object it embraced or resisted. Now shift your gaze to the serpent's most unexpected role, as a symbol of eternal love. The basilisk, a serpent crowned with a golden crest, appeared in the arms of certain Italian families, not as a monster but as a guardian of marital fidelity, its unblinking watchfulness mirroring the vigilance required to nurture lasting bonds. Contrast this with the serpent in the caduceus, its twin coils around a winged staff representing negotiation and diplomacy, proving that even the most feared creatures could become ambassadors of peace when rendered by skilled heralds. From healing to destruction, from chaos to unity, the serpent's legacy in heraldry reminds us that symbols are never static, they evolve with the cultures that wield them. A creature reviled in one context became revered in another, its meaning as malleable as the artists who painted it onto parchment and polished steel. And as we prepare to delve into the next emblem, remember, heraldry's power lies not in simplicity, but in its capacity to hold contradictions in perfect, poised balance, much like the serpent itself, forever suspended between earth and mystery. The serpent's sinuous duality brings us to a creature of earthy, unshakable strength, the bear, heraldry's embodiment of rugged resilience and untamed authority. Where the serpent balanced wisdom with danger, the bear lumbered onto shields with a singular message, raw power tempered by endurance. This wasn't just an animal, it was a four-legged manifesto of survival, its massive frame and deliberate movements whispering of families who thrived not through fleeting victories but through sheer, unyielding persistence. Picture a bear rampant rearing on its hind legs with claws unsheathed etched in black against a golden field. This wasn't merely intimidating, it was a calculated declaration. The bear's posture, frozen mid-roar, transformed shields into proclamations that the bearer would stand their ground against any foe. The Russian city of Yaroslavl adopted this very image, tying its identity to the legend of its founder slaying a bear with his bare hands. But heraldry's bears weren't always aggressive. A bear passant, walking calmly with one paw raised, might signal steady governance, like the Habsburgs' use of the creature to represent their methodical expansion across Europe. Dig deeper, and the bear's symbolism reveals surprising layers. In Norse and Slavic traditions, it was revered as a bridge between worlds, equally at home in forests and the spirit realm. Families who bore bears on their crests often hinted at ancestral ties to shamanic wisdom or claims of divine favor. The Swiss city of Bern took this further, weaving the bear into its very name and civic heraldry as a nod to both physical strength and protective stewardship. Even the bear's hibernation carried meaning. A bear depicted curled in sleep wasn't weak but strategic, conserving energy like a dynasty biding its time before resurgence. Now contrast this with the bear's role in ecclesiastical heraldry. Saint Corbinian's legend tells of a bear forced to carry the saint's luggage as penance for killing his pack horse, a story that turned the creature into an allegory for tamed brute force in service of faith. When bishops incorporated bears into their coats of arms, they weren't celebrating wildness but transformation, the idea that even the fiercest natures could be redirected toward holiness. This duality made the bear irresistible to noble houses who saw themselves as both warriors and shepherds of their people. What sets the bear apart in heraldry is its grounded authenticity. Unlike the serpent's mystery or the lion's regal remove, the bear felt tangible, a creature you might encounter in misty woods, its breath fogging the air as it eyed you with calculating intelligence. A bear clutching a tree trunk, like the one in the arms of the Finnish Björnborg family, didn't just symbolize strength, it rooted that strength in the very land the family governed. And when rendered with a salmon clasped in its jaws as seen in some Scottish crest, it married terrestrial might to aquatic abundance, a reminder that true power flowed from multiple sources. From the icy forests of Scandinavia to the alpine valleys of Switzerland, the bear's presence in heraldry spoke a universal language. Endurance wasn't just about surviving storms, but learning to thrive within them. Its heavy paws left prints that lasted centuries, just as the families who bore its image aimed to leave marks that time couldn't erase. And as we turn next to the soaring creatures of heraldry's skies, we'll see how wings and talons carried their own weight of meaning, higher, perhaps, but no less potent. The bear's unshakable presence as both protector and warrior brings us to another heraldic heavyweight, the tower, a symbol that transformed stone and mortar into a language of unbreakable resolve. Where the bear embodied organic strength, the tower stood as mankind's answer to nature's chaos, its straight lines and battlements declaring human ingenuity's triumph over uncertainty. This wasn't just architecture rendered in pigment. It was a visual oath, a promise that the family bearing this emblem would be as steadfast as fortified walls. Picture a lone tower rising from a shield center, its crenellated top catching the first light of dawn. Every detail here carried weight. The thickness of its walls hinted at resilience, while arrow slits signaled vigilance. The Castilian House of Lara famously adopted this symbol, their tower not merely representing physical strongholds, but the enduring legacy of a lineage that withstood sieges both martial and political. A tower engulfed in flames, like the one in the arms of the Scottish clan MacLeod, told a different story, one of sacrifice, where even in destruction, the structure's silhouette remained, a ghostly testament to unyielding spirit. But towers in heraldry weren't monolithic. A tower with an open gate whispered of hospitality amid strength, as seen in the crests of border lords who balanced defense with diplomacy. Contrast that with a tower whose door was barred, a clear declaration that some lines could not be crossed. Even the materials mattered. Golden towers spoke of divine right, while silver ones mirrored the moon's watchful gaze over nocturnal realms. The Tora family of Italy took this further, their emblem's tower entwined with ivy, marrying stony permanence to organic growth, a nod to dynasties that evolved without forgetting their roots. What makes the tower so compelling is its duality. It could represent both isolation and community, a solitary sentinel or the heart of a thriving settlement. A crumbling tower might signify noble ruins like the Percys of Northumberland, whose weathered crest hinted at ancient glory preserved against time's erosion. Yet when paired with waves, as in the arms of coastal families, the tower became a lighthouse, its stability guiding others through turmoil. This adaptability allowed the symbol to flourish across contexts, from Crusader knights who saw towers as spiritual fortresses to merchant dynasties who used them to represent trade hubs where wealth and ideas converged. Now consider how this emblem interacted with others. A tower surmounted by a lion transformed the structure into a throne, its heights reserved for royalty. One flanked by olive branches, a piece hard-won and carefully guarded. Even the tower's position on the shield spoke volumes. Centered, it claimed primacy. Offset, it might acknowledge vassalage to a greater power. The Spanish Mendoza family layered meaning further, their tower crowned with a crescent moon, blending celestial ambition with earthly authority. From the bear's primal guardianship to the tower's engineered might, heraldry's genius lay in its ability to distill entire philosophies into singular images. One creature drew power from the wild, the other from human hands, yet both stood as timeless reminders that true strength wasn't just about force, but the wisdom to wield it well. And as we turn next to the celestial symbols that graced medieval crest stars, moons, and suns, we'll see how nobles reached beyond Earth to anchor their legacies in the cosmos itself. The tower's unshakable silhouette fades into a more elusive symbol, the crescent moon, a celestial curve that glimmered across medieval shields with meanings as layered as its phases. Where stone fortresses spoke of earthly power, this sliver of light whispered of cosmic cycles, divine favor, and the quiet persistence of hope in darkness. Unlike the tower's rigid geometry, the crescent moved fluidly through heraldry, its horns pointing toward everything from Crusader victories to the rhythm of time itself. Consider the crescent's simplest form, a silver arc cradling empty space against a field of azure or gules. In Christian heraldry, this often symbolized the Virgin Mary, her purity mirrored in the moon's gentle glow. The Beauchamp family of England paired their crescent with a star, transforming the night sky into a celestial map of guidance. But twist the crescent's orientation, and its meaning shifted dramatically. A moon with horns pointing upward like a cup ready to catch blessings hinted at receptivity to divine grace. Flip it downward, and suddenly it became the moon in her decrease, a potent reminder of mortality or a family's ability to thrive even in waning fortunes. Now contrast this with the crescent's role in Islamic-influenced heraldry. After the Crusades, European knights who had battled Saracen armies sometimes adopted the symbol not in defeat, but as a trophy, a proof of their encounters with a formidable foe. The French d'Albret family bore a golden crescent on crimson, a nod to ancestral victories in the Holy Land. Yet in Moorish Spain, the crescent took on different shades, where it adorned the arms of converted nobles as a bridge between cultures, its horns cradling both faith and heritage. What makes the crescent so fascinating is its duality. It could be both martial and mystical. A crescent pierced by an arrow, like the one in the crests of certain Baltic families, spoke of vigilance literally piercing through night's veil. One cradling a human face, as seen in Italian heraldry, evoked lunar deities watching over lineages. Even its material mattered. A golden crescent radiated solar energy despite its lunar shape, while a silver one stayed true to the moon's cool luminosity. The Gonzagas of Mantua layered meaning further, their crescent cradling a cross, a bold statement that celestial and divine authority moved in tandem. From the towers that rooted families to the earth to the crescents that tied them to the heavens, heraldry's symbols remind us that medieval identity stretched beyond the terrestrial. A noble house wasn't just defending land, it was aligning itself with the very cosmos, its legacy written not just in stone but in starlight. And as we turn next to the blazing suns and scattered stars that shared these celestial stages, we'll see how entire dynasties staked their claims among the constellations. The crescent moon's delicate arc gives way to a symbol of unrestrained brilliance, the heraldic sun, an emblem that blazed across medieval shields with the promise of glory and divine favor. Where the moon whispered of cycles and subtlety, the sun roared with unapterous radiance, its golden rays stretching like the fingers of a king bestowing blessings. This wasn't just a celestial body, it was a visual anthem of sovereignty, enlightenment, and the life-giving power that sustained kingdoms. To bear the sun on one's coat of arms was to claim a kinship with the heavens themselves, aligning one's destiny with the unstoppable force that governed day and season. Picture a sun in splendor, a disk surrounded by alternating straight and wavy rays, each beam meticulously rendered to distinguish fiery energy from shimmering light. The House of York's golden sun on azure didn't merely signify nobility, it evoked the idea of rule as natural and inevitable as sunrise, their authority as essential to the realm as sunlight to the crops. Contrast this with the sun eclipsed, a rare but potent variant where the disk is partially obscured, often used by families who had weathered temporary downfall only to emerge stronger, their resilience mirroring the moon's fleeting shadow over solar glory. The sun's posture held layers of meaning. A rising sun with rays ascending heralded new beginnings, like the dawning of a dynasty's golden age. The Habsburgs adopted this symbol during their rise to power, their crest's ascending sun signaling an empire on the horizon. Yet a setting sun wasn't necessarily a mark of decline. It could represent the wisdom of age, like the setting sun that graced the arms of elderly monarchs, their long reigns compared to a day's steady arc. Even the number of rays spoke volumes. 12 might nod to apostles or zodiacal cycles, while 16 could echo the compass points, suggesting a ruler's far-reaching influence. Now consider how the sun interacted with other heraldic elements. A lion bathed in solar rays became more than a beast. It transformed into the Lion of the Morning, a metaphor for Christ's resurrection in Crusader iconography. The Portuguese Order of Christ wove this imagery into their banners, their crimson sun cradling a cross, fusing celestial power with sacred duty. Alternatively, a sunburst behind a tower, as seen in Spanish heraldry, married solar vitality to earthly fortification, declaring that the family's strength was both radiant and unshakable. What makes the sun so captivating is its universality. From the black sun of Nordic rulers, a dark disk with splayed rays, symbolizing wisdom hidden in shadow, to the white sun of Asian-inspired coats of arms, this emblem transcended borders. The Japanese Terra clan's red sun on white echoed their mythic descent from Amaterasu, the sun goddess, while the Persian-derived sun in his glory appeared in the arms of Mediterranean mercantile families, its golden disk a promise of prosperity as reliable as the dawn. Yet the sun's brilliance wasn't merely about power, it carried a softer symbolism too. A sun with a human face, known as a sun in his splendor, often represented enlightenment and paternal care, like the benevolent gaze of a ruler watching over his people. The Medici family occasionally paired this with flowering branches, suggesting that their patronage nurtured arts and sciences as the sun nurtured spring blooms. Even the sun's heat could be tempered. A sun proper shown in natural colors might radiate warmth, while one, or golden, leaned into divine association, tying the bearer's lineage to solar deities or angelic hierarchies. From the crescent's quiet promise of renewal to the sun's blazing declaration of permanence, heraldry's celestial symbols remind us that medieval identity stretched beyond the terrestrial. A noble house didn't just anchor itself to land, it staked its legacy among the stars, its story written in the language of light itself. And as we turn next to the stars that shared these skies, we'll see how 5 pointed sparks became shorthand for destiny, guidance, and the hope that even in darkness, something watched over the fate of men. The heraldic sun's blazing brilliance finds its counterpoint in a symbol of earthly struggle: crossed swords, where the radiance of kings gives way to the stark language of battle. Where the sun spoke of divine right and celestial favor, these intersecting blades told a simpler, sharper story: conflict, honor, and the unyielding resolve of those who lived by the sword. This was no abstract emblem. It was a visceral declaration, etched in steel and worn by warriors who needed no metaphor to explain their purpose. Picture 2 longswords crossed at the hilt, their points flaring outward like the sun's rays, but where light promised life, these edges promised something fiercer. The Teutonic knights wielded this symbol as both warning and creed, their black crosses superimposed over silver blades, whispering that faith and force walked hand in hand. A closer look reveals nuances. Swords crossed saltire-wise in an X often signaled defensive alliances, as seen in the arms of border lords who banded together against invaders. Swords crossed in pall, forming a Y, hinted at a triad of loyalties, perhaps to liege, church, and kin. Even the condition of the blades carried meaning. A nicked or broken sword might commemorate a costly victory, while pristine edges boasted of undiminished strength. But crossed swords weren't merely about aggression. In the hands of certain orders, they became instruments of justice. The sword brothers of Livonia Boar crossed blades behind a red cross, transforming weapons into tools of sacred duty. Contrast this with the twin sabers of the Polish hussars, their curved steel arcs mirroring the wings on their armor, a dance of lethal grace that turned warfare into artistry. The difference between a broadsword and a rapier in these compositions wasn't incidental. One spoke of brute strength, the other of precision, allowing families to telegraph their combat philosophy without a word. Now consider how this emblem evolved beyond the battlefield. Crossed swords on a merchant's crest, a nod to the cut and thrust of commerce on a scholar's seal. A metaphor for intellectual dueling where ideas clashed as fiercely as steel. The German city of Solingen, famed for its blades, crowned its coat of arms with this symbol, declaring craftsmanship as revered as knighthood itself. Even the angle of the crossing told stories, swords leaning toward each other like comrades or straining apart like rivals, each variation a subtle shift in narrative. What makes crossed swords so compelling is their honesty. Unlike the sun's celestial grandiosity, they acknowledge the grit beneath the glory, the blood, sweat, and sacrifice that underpinned medieval power. A monarch might claim divine mandate from the heavens, but it was these crossed blades that secured his throne. And as we turn next to the crowns that rested above both sun and sword, we'll see how heraldry's highest symbol distilled the very essence of sovereignty into bands of precious metal and gemstones. Crossed swords gleam with the unspoken vows of knighthood, a promise to defend, to judge, and to stand unwavering at the crossroads of conflict and honor. These aren't just weapons laid across a shield, they're a visual oath, their blades forming an X that marks the spot where duty and danger intersect. Picture the Teutonic Knights emblem, where the stark black cross of their order overlays silver swords, fusing faith with steel in a single, striking image. This was more than decoration, it was a manifesto. The angle of the crossing whispered secret, swords tilted toward each other like comrades in arms signaled alliance, while blades straining apart hinted at hard-won victories where adversaries were pushed back by sheer force of will. But the crossed sword's symbolism cuts deeper than the battlefield. In the courts of medieval Europe, these same blades transformed into scales of justice. The Constable of France bore them on his banner not as a threat, but as a reminder that his authority could sever deceit from truth with a single stroke. A sword's condition told its own tale. A blade notched from combat might commemorate a pivotal victory, while an unmarred edge spoke of a lineage unbroken by defeat. Even the type of sword mattered. The broad, heavy arming swords of Crusader-era heraldry shouted brute strength, while the elegant rapiers of Renaissance coats of arms whispered of dueling finesse and diplomatic precision. Now imagine these crossed blades framing another symbol, a crown, perhaps, or a lion's head, and suddenly the meaning shifts again. Swords beneath a crown became the pillars of sovereignty, the instruments through which royal will was enforced. Flanking a book, they morphed into defenders of knowledge, as seen in the crests of university towns where scholars and soldiers coexisted. The German city of Solingen, famed for its swordsmiths, proudly displayed crossed blades on its civic arms, turning weapons into a testament to craftsmanship that shaped empires. From the saltire crossed longswords of border lords to the jeweled sabers of Eastern European nobility, this emblem adapted to every context without losing its edge. It acknowledged the duality at the heart of chivalry, that the same blade that could cut down a foe might also knight a squire or swear an oath. And as these swords fade from view, another creature pads forward from the heraldic shadows, the wolf, a symbol as layered as the twilight forests it haunts. Where crossed swords declared martial pride openly, the wolf moved with quieter cunning. This wasn't the lion's regal roar or the bear's blunt force, it was the strategy of the pack, the endurance of the lone hunter, and the fierce protection of kin. A wolf rampant on a shield, as borne by the powerful Visconti family, wasn't just a predator. It was a declaration that the bearer understood both the strength of unity and the shrewdness to survive isolation. Unlike the sword's stark steel, the wolf's meaning shifted with its posture. A howling wolf might signal vigilance, while one carrying a lamb in its jaws, as in the crests of certain monastic orders, became a paradoxical emblem of mercy, recalling legends where wolves turned protectors. The wolf's resilience resonated deeply in northern heraldry. Scandinavian clans often depicted it against snow-streaked fields, its fur rendered in wintry whites and greys, a nod to ancestors who outlasted frozen winters as tenaciously as the beast itself. Yet in Mediterranean coats of arms, the wolf took on mythic dimensions, echoing the she-wolf who nursed Rome's founders. Whether rendered as a lean hunter or a mythic guardian, the wolf's presence whispered the same truth. True power lay as much in patience and perception as in the flash of steel. As the wolf's silhouette melts back into the forest of symbols, we're reminded that heraldry's genius was its ability to balance opposites, the sword's clarity with the wolf's subtlety, the sun's brilliance with the moon's mystery. Each emblem a thread, together weaving a tapestry where conflict and cunning, honor and instinct stood not in opposition but in eternal, intricate dialogue. The wolf's shadow slips silently through heraldry's forest, a creature long misunderstood yet rich with layered meaning. Where lions roared and eagles soared, the wolf moved with quiet purpose its pack mentality, transforming into a powerful emblem of familial devotion. Medieval nobles who bore this symbol weren't celebrating savagery. They were encoding a profound truth. That true strength flowed from bonds as unbreakable as a wolf's loyalty to its kin. Picture a silver wolf howling against a midnight blue field, its muzzle tilted toward a crescent moon, the classic heraldic representation of vigilance. This wasn't just an animal, it was a living alarm system, a reminder that danger could come from any direction, and only the watchful would endure. The Visconti of Milan wielded the wolf with particular brilliance. Their emblem showed not a snarling beast, but one carrying a child gently in its jaws, a nod to the legend of their ancestor saving an infant from a wolf's den. Here, the predator transformed into protector, its ferocity redirected toward safeguarding the vulnerable. Contrast this with the loup-garou, or werewolf motifs in French heraldry, where the creature symbolized warriors who could shift between civilized diplomacy and battlefield fury. A wolf chained that spoke of hard-won alliances, one leaping over a barrier, a family's ability to overcome obstacles through collective effort. Yet the wolf's resilience shone brightest in northern traditions. Scandinavian clans often rendered it in winter white fur against azure backgrounds, their coats of arms whispering of ancestors who, like the wolf, outlasted famine and frost through sheer tenacity. The Icelandic Jarnvedr family took this further, depicting their wolf with a broken spear in its teeth, a metaphor for turning enemies' weapons into trophies. Even the direction of its gaze held meaning. A wolf looking backward over its shoulder might signify remembrance of past struggles, while one staring ahead signaled focus on future victories. Now, witness the wolf's most surprising transformation into a symbol of monastic devotion. The Dominican order's founder, Saint Dominic, was often depicted with a wolf bearing a torch, tying the creature's pack loyalty to the spreading of spiritual light. Cistercian abbeys used wolves carrying lambs in their seals, echoing biblical imagery of reconciliation between natural adversaries. This duality, ferocity, and guardianship made the wolf indispensable to nobles who saw themselves as both warriors and shepherds of their people. From the moonlit hunt to the hearth's protection, the wolf's legacy in heraldry reminds us that medieval symbols thrived on paradox. A creature feared in the wild became, on a shield, a testament to the unbreakable ties that bind whether by blood, oath, or shared survival. And as the wolf's howl fades, another mythic creature rises from the ashes to claim its place in heraldry's pantheon, the phoenix, whose fiery rebirth wove destruction and renewal into a single, dazzling emblem. Where the wolf's power lay in earthly bonds, the phoenix soared beyond them, a burst of flame and feathers that defied mortality itself. Heraldic artists rendered this legendary bird mid-immolation, its wings wreathed in gold and crimson tendrils, each plume a promise that endings were merely preludes. The Bourbon kings of France grasped this symbolism when they adopted the phoenix rising from flames, their emblem declaring that dynasties like the bird could rise anew from political upheaval. A phoenix, in its piety, wreathed in a halo of fire, took the metaphor further, tying resurrection to divine sanction. But the phoenix's magic wasn't just about cyclical rebirth, it was about transformation. Italian alchemists' guilds stamped their documents with phoenixes clutching alembics, suggesting their art could transmute base matter into gold as effortlessly as the bird renewed itself. In Scottish heraldry, a phoenix atop a yew tree, as seen in the Forbes crest, married Celtic tree lore to classical myth, implying wisdom accumulated across lifetimes. Even the flame's color whispered secrets: gold for enlightenment, red for sacrifice, blue for the otherworldly. What makes the phoenix so captivating is its refusal to fit neatly into categories. Unlike the wolf's grounded loyalty, it existed in a state of perpetual becoming, its very essence tied to the moment between destruction and recreation. When Elizabeth I minted coins bearing the phoenix, she wasn't just referencing her mother's tragic fate. She was proclaiming that from Anne Boleyn's ashes, a new era of English glory had taken flight. The phoenix's wings, forever outstretched in heraldic art, remind us that some symbols don't just represent power, they defy the very laws that seek to contain it. The phoenix's flames still flicker in our minds as we turn to another heraldic powerhouse, the horse, a creature that galloped across medieval shields with the same unbridled energy it brought to battlefields. Where the phoenix soared through myth, the horse remained gloriously earthbound, its hooves pounding out rhythms of loyalty, nobility, and the unstoppable momentum of dynasties in motion. This wasn't just a mode of transport, it was a four-legged declaration of intent, its every muscle and sinew rendered in heraldic art to telegraph the virtues of those who rode into history upon its back. Picture a stallion, rampant forelegs reared, mane whipping like battle banners etched in jet black against a field of gold. The Devereux family of England wielded this image with precision, their emblem shouting that their lineage moved with the same uncontainable force as a warhorse breaching enemy line. But heraldry's horses weren't all fury. A horse passant, walking with one hoof delicately raised, might signal measured authority, like the steady gait of a ruler surveying his lands. The difference between a destrier warhorse and a palfrey riding horse in these designs wasn't trivial. One screamed battlefield dominance, the other whispered courtly elegance and diplomatic finesse. Delve deeper, and the horse's symbolism reveals surprising layers. In Celtic traditions, horses like the legendary Epona bridged the mortal and divine, their hooves kicking up dust in both realms. Families who bore white horses often hinted at ties to sovereignty myths. Think of the Uffington white horse carved into England's hills, its silhouette a prehistoric proclamation of rule. The Frisians of the Netherlands took this further, their heraldic horses wading through waves, a nod to their mastery of land and sea alike. Even a horse's harness spoke volumes. One decked in golden trappings suggested wealth, while an unbridled horse symbolized unfettered ambition, or, in ecclesiastical heraldry, the unchecked spread of faith. Now contrast this with the horse's role in mercantile heraldry. A team of draft horses hauling a wagon on a guild's crest didn't represent war. It celebrated commerce's engine, the muscle that turned trade routes into arteries of empire. The Hanseatic League's wagon motifs whispered that their economic might rolled as inexorably as a laden cart downhill. Alternatively, a winged horse like the Pegasus in the arms of poetic patrons transformed into a metaphor for creativity's boundless gallop, proof that heraldry steeds could carry not just knights but dreams. What makes the heraldic horse so compelling is its raw versatility. Unlike the phoenix's singular rebirth, the horse embodied countless narratives, from the plowhorse's patient strength to the charger's thunderous valor. A horse with a flaming mane, like those in the crests of Balkan nobility, tied solar energy to equine power, while one leaping a gate, as seen in Danish coats of arms, signaled ambition clearing all obstacles. From the Mongol Khan's fleet-footed ponies to the armored steeds of French paladins, this creature adapted to every culture without losing its essential truth: that motion is life, and those who master it shape history. As the horse's silhouette fades into the horizon, we glimpse our final symbol waiting in the wings, not a creature of flesh and blood, but one of crafted might. The armored gauntlet, clenched in readiness, will close our journey through heraldry's visual language, its steel fingers gripping the very essence of knighthood's enduring legacy. The horse's thunderous gallop fades into a different kind of power, the heraldic key, an emblem that unlocked far more than physical doors. Where the horse embodied unfettered motion, the key represented the opposite: control, trust, and the solemn duty to guard what mattered most. This unassuming object, often rendered in gleaming gold or silver upon shields and banners, carried a weight disproportionate to its size. To bear a key in one's coat of arms was to declare oneself a keeper of secrets, of cities, of the very gates separating order from chaos. Picture a single key dangling from a ring, its wards those intricate notches along the blade meticulously detailed. These weren't decorative. In heraldry, each ward whispered of unique responsibilities. The Papal States keys crossed in saltire, one gold and one silver, symbolized the dual authority of earthly and spiritual dominion, echoing Christ's words to Peter. Contrast this with the iron keys of medieval burghers, whose simpler designs denoted their role as stewards of trade and civic order. Even the key's position spoke volumes. Held upright, it signaled vigilance; turned downward, it might imply the release of obligations or the opening of new opportunities. But keys in heraldry weren't just about literal locks. A key paired with a tower, like those in the arms of border fortresses, transformed into a pledge that the bearer would safeguard the realm's weakest points. One entwined with a serpent, as seen in the crests of medical families, hinted at the unlocking of healing knowledge. The German city of Schlüsselburg took this further, its namesake, Key Castle emblem declaring its role as the kingdom's strategic linchpin, where control of a single pass could determine a nation's fate. What makes the key so fascinating is its duality. It could represent both imprisonment and liberation, a single object that, depending on its use, could seal destinies or fling wide the doors to fortune. The broken key on the arms of the Spanish Perez family commemorated an ancestor who shattered his own keys rather than surrender a besieged citadel, turning defeat into an emblem of unbroken resolve. Meanwhile, a key presented on a cushion, as in certain ecclesiastical crests, softened the symbol's harshness, suggesting that the power to bind and loose could be wielded with mercy. From the horse's kinetic energy to the key's poised potential, heraldry's symbols remind us that medieval identity balanced motion and stability. One creature charged forward, the other stood firm, holding the line between chaos and order. And as we turn next to the crowns that rested above both steed and sentry, we'll see how heraldry's ultimate symbol of authority distilled sovereignty into a circle of precious metal and gemstones. The key's quiet power unlocks another realm of heraldic symbolism, the ship, an emblem that carried far more than sailors across turbulent seas. Where the key spoke of guardianship and hidden knowledge, the ship sailed into medieval crests as a dynamic declaration of exploration, trade, and the audacity to venture beyond the horizon. This wasn't merely a vessel painted on parchment. It was a floating manifesto, its sails billowing with the winds of ambition and its hull weighted with generations of maritime legacy. Picture a heraldic ship in full sail, its masts towering over waves meticulously rendered in silver and azure. The maritime republics of Venice and Genoa didn't adopt this symbol lightly. Their galleys emblazoned on banners whispered of thalassocracy, the rare sovereignty that flowed not from land but from mastery of the sea. Every detail here mattered. Sails unfurled signaled prosperous winds harnessed, while oars deployed spoke of determination to push forward even when nature withheld its favor. A ship with banners streaming from its masts, like those in the arms of Scandinavian kings, transformed the vessel into a floating extension of royal authority, its very presence on distant shores a reminder that power could cross oceans. But heraldic ships weren't all grandeur. A humble cogger, a rounded merchant vessel, on a guild's crest celebrated the unsung arteries of empire, trade routes where wool, spice, and ideas mingled in the hold. The Hanseatic League's ships often bore their sails reefed, a subtle nod to the prudence required when navigating both storms and market fluctuations. Contrast this with the Norse Drakkar, its dragon-headed prow snarling from shields of Viking jarls. Its serpentine curves a promise that these sailors would carve their destinies with the same ferocity they carved waves. The ship's cargo held symbolic weight too, one laden with golden ingots like those in the crests of Portuguese explorers, spoke of wealth hauled from newfound worlds. Another bearing a lone lantern at its stern, as seen in the arms of lighthouse-keeping families, became a beacon of safe passage. Even shipwrecks found their place in heraldry. A vessel broken upon rocks might commemorate an ancestor's survival against impossible odds, turning tragedy into a testament of resilience. What makes the heraldic ship so compelling is its duality. It could represent both departure and return, both risk and reward. The Spanish house of Mendoza's ship sailing toward a setting sun whispered of epic voyages, while the Dutch Van der Zee's ship moored at harbor signaled the wisdom of knowing when to rest. From the Mediterranean's lateen-rigged caravels to the Baltic's sturdy knars, these floating emblems adapted to every coastline, proving that water, like heraldry itself, was a language without borders, one where even the smallest dinghy could carry the weight of a dynasty's dreams. Now set sail toward another symbol riding history's currents, the anchor, where motion meets steadfastness, and the sea's restless energy finds its counterpoint in unshakable resolve. The ship's sails billow one final time as we reach the end of our voyage through the vibrant world of heraldry, a journey that began with lions and eagles and now docks with this timeless emblem of adventure. More than mere transport, the heraldic ship carried the weight of human ambition in its hold, its mast piercing the sky like a needle stitching together distant shores. For maritime dynasties, this symbol wasn't just pride, it was a compass pointing to their legacy, each wave in the design whispering of tempests weathered and fortunes won. Consider the Portuguese house of Aves, whose caravels adorned with crosses sailed across their crests, transforming exploration into a sacred calling. Their ships weren't empty vessels, they bristled with meaning, anchors for hope, sails for divine favor, and prows carved like saints to bless uncharted waters. Contrast this with the Hanseatic League's sturdy cogs, their rounded hulls mirroring the practicality of merchants who saw the sea not as a frontier, but as a highway linking coin to commodity. Even the ship's condition told stories. One with tattered sails might honor an ancestor who limped home after disaster, while a galley with oars raised signaled triumph through sheer human effort. Yet the ship's true power lay in its duality. It could symbolize both departure and return, as seen in the arms of crusading knights who stamped ships beside crosses, their journey to the Holy Land etched into familial identity. A shipwreck rendered in stark lines, like the one in the Scottish clan MacLeod's Crest, wasn't a mark of shame but of survival. Its broken timbers a testament that some lineages endure even when their vessels don't. And when a golden sun rose behind the mast, as in the arms of Venetian admirals, it fused celestial guidance with nautical prowess, suggesting that true explorers sailed by both star and soul. As our heraldic voyage concludes, we're left with more than a catalogue of symbols. We've uncovered a lost language of identity, where every color, creature, and curve held the weight of oaths and aspirations. From the lion's roar to the ship's wake, these emblems remind us that history isn't just written in ink or stone, but in the bold strokes of a shield's design, waiting centuries for someone to decipher their stories. And though the age of knights has passed, their symbols still speak, if we know how to listen. From lions to keys, each heraldic symbol we've explored today carries centuries of meaning, blending art, history, and identity into a single, striking design. These weren't just decorations slapped onto shields, they were a knight's resume written in color and line, a family's pride stitched into banners, and a storyteller's canvas where every curve and hue whispered of battles won, alliances forged, and legacies cemented. Think about the golden lion, its mane ablaze against a crimson field, roaring defiance across generations, or the delicate fleur de lis, its petals frozen in time, tying earthly power to divine grace. Even the humble key, often overlooked, held the weight of trust and dominion, its wards as intricate as the secrets it guarded. What's astonishing is how these symbols transcended their medieval origins, seeping into modern flags, corporate logos, and even sports emblems. The lion Rampant still prowls Scotland's royal standard, just as the eagle's outstretched wings soar on everything from presidential seals to sports jerseys. Heraldry's language never died, it simply evolved, proving that a well-crafted symbol can outlast kingdoms and speak across centuries. Now, we'd love to hear which emblem captured your imagination. Was it the dragon's coiled might, the stag's quiet nobility, or the phoenix's fiery rebirth? Drop your favorite in the comments and tell us why it resonates with you. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden language of knights and nobles, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. Our next adventure into history's mysteries is just around the corner. Until then, keep looking closer at the world around you. You never know what ancient symbols might be hiding in plain sight, waiting to share their